Curious about our local housing market? Wondering if it's a good time to buy or sell? Keep watching and I'll give you a rundown of 2019 and what to expect in 2020. Hey, what's up? I'm Matt Rooney and this is the best of Waterloo Region. Today we're going to take a look at our local housing market, how things progressed last year, and what you can expect in the coming months. We ended 2019 with an extremely low inventory level. I'm not going to jump into all the stats here, but if you're interested, I've included a link in the description of this video with all of the numbers. One stat I do get asked for all the time is the average selling price of a home in our region. The average price of any style home in 2019 was about $528,000. The average single detached home sold for about $615,000. If you're ever curious about specific styles of homes like townhouses or condos, hit me up and I'll let you know the average selling price or the market value of a specific property. I'm going to pause here and offer some info that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page. What you need to know for our purposes is that supply and demand are inversely related. For those that don't know, when supply is low like this and demand is high, it drives prices up. Similarly, if we had a ton of homes for sale and no one who wanted to buy them, it would force prices down. Okay, so rolling into 2020 here, and we see that we started with the same low inventory numbers we finished last year with, but our demand hasn't dropped, specifically with first-time home buyers. What this means is that prices are still on the rise. Now, this isn't anything new for us. We saw prices jump dramatically in 2016, and they've been on the rise ever since. Our supply hasn't been able to catch up with demand, and it doesn't look like that's going to change anytime soon, but more on that in a minute. First, let's start with what you need to know about our demand. When most of us are looking for our first home, we can't afford $1 million home and are working within a budget. Keep in mind that generally speaking, the hardest part of buying your first home is saving up the down payment, and with prices continuing to rise, that number keeps growing too. This has created a surge in the prices of homes on the lower end of the scale, which has a large ripple effect on the prices on the upper end of the scale. There are other reasons that higher end homes would grow in price, but we'll save that for another day. Now, in addition to all of our first-time home buyers, we also happen to be on the 401 corridor and close enough to Toronto to be affected by their market. Their prices went up, people couldn't afford to buy there or realized that they could get two homes here for the price of one there, and they made the choice to buy here and commute. Investors also realized this price difference and started buying up investment properties here. And then on top of that, we have the people that are moving here from out of town for various reasons, or are moving from within the region into their second, third, or forever homes. Or we have people looking for investment properties for themselves from our region. We also happen to have a great job market and play host to two large universities and one large college, which all attract even more people to the region. So, in addition to our extremely competitive housing market, our rentals are also seeing a huge jump in price. Our vacancy rate is ridiculously low, and we're seeing bidding wars on rentals. What this all means for you is that it's a great time to sell your home. I'm aware of the catch-22 here, and that if you sell, you still have to buy in a competitive market. But if you can afford to upgrade, there's less competition in higher price brackets than the lower. Also, if you're willing to add a little time to your drive, this is the perfect time to take the earnings on your home and head a bit outside of town where you can get a little more bang for your buck. If you picture the growth of our housing market like a dartboard, you can see that the highest growth is almost centralized. This is a bit of a generalization, as our strongest growth is not necessarily in the center of town, but work with me here, okay? If you get a little farther away from the fastest growing areas, then you start to see a slight decrease in the rise in prices. Maybe you have to sacrifice your proximity to the 401 or work. Then you get a little farther out, and now maybe you've got a 30-minute drive to work, you can see a little more countryside around your neighborhood, but the prices aren't quite as high here as they are closer to the center of the board. Well, this effect is going to continue, but as the bullseye price rise, so will the prices on the outer circles. Eventually, you can imagine that the growth will raise the prices on the outer circles to that of the prices in the middle, while the prices in the middle will continue to have grown even further. Which brings us back to supply and demand. Do we think there's going to be a forthcoming change in our housing market that will have an effect on prices? We've already seen the government attempt to curb the growth through things like the stress test. which was also put in place to help prevent a market crash, but that's another conversation for another time. A foreign investor tax was added, which seemed to cause a hiccup for a minute. There was a threat that interest rates were going to rise, which they did, ever so slightly, but they're back down around 3%, and really, nothing's changed. Now, I'm no economist, so take this with a grain of salt. My prediction is that our housing market continues on this upward trajectory through 2020, and I don't think I'm going out on much of a limb with that prediction. The Bank of Canada tends to follow the US Fed when it comes to interest rates, though late last year the BOC did hold firm while the Fed dropped. Basically, these things can change quickly and can be affected by a number of factors, but short of a global recession or some unforeseen circumstance, it looks like housing will remain stable. That's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for tuning into the Best of Waterloo Region. I'm Matt Rooney, and feel free to hit me up if you ever have any questions.
See ya.